everyone, and welcome to the September 2017 update to the Power BI desktop. This release is a very big one for us with a lot of exciting features. Most of those features are going to fall into the reporting section of the product this month, and the first one of those is drill through to another report page. Now, this is a really exciting feature for us because, one, we know a lot of people have been really excited for this feature for a very long time, especially after we demoed it at the Data Insight Summit. And it's also just a really powerful tool for creating really interactive reports. So let me show you that. So drill through is all around letting your consumers of your reports drill into additional level of details when they want to. So I'm going to actually demonstrate. I'm going to be a little different this time than normal, and I'm going to demonstrate this feature before I actually show you how to create it, just so that everyone can really understand how this feature is meant to be used. So what I've done here is I've created this page that has a bunch of charts all just on manufacturer information. So it can have like the manufacturer name, how much sales that manufacturer has given me, all the details about where those sales have occurred, what they manufacture, just a bunch of details about the manufacturers that I have. And then I also have a product sales page. And so this page goes into a whole lot of details about just all of my products in general. How are they doing? What are all of the individual sales that are taking place for what products? How are they going in terms of satisfaction and how likely they are to be purchased again? And what I want my consumers to be able to do is being able to, as they're looking through all the different sales that are happening, if they want to learn a little bit more about an individual manufacturer, like for example, if they're seeing a lot of the sales for a given manufacturer is really low, they want to be able to drill in and learn more about the manufacturer details, maybe get their contact information and investigate more why that might be happening. So what I've done is I've set up this manufacturer data page as a drill through page, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. And since it's set up as a drill through page, now anywhere else in my report where I have a chart that has the manufacturer column on it, what I can do is I can right click on, say, this row of data in this table, and I have this new option called drill through that lets me drill through into the manufacturer data page, taking the filter context with it. So for example, I am on the Contoso row, and so what's going to happen is when I drill through to the manufacturer data page, the fact that I was right-clicking on Contoso is passed through to this page. And now all of these charts are filtered down to just Contoso data. And what I can do is I can go back. A nice other feature we have for drill through pages is that you can have a back button. So if a consumer right-clicks, lands on that page, they don't have to remember what page they were on within your report. They can just use this back button to click and go back to where the page they were on before. And they can continue to look through all the different data, explore, and then if they have another row that they want to get more information on for that manufacturer, they can right-click and drill through again. And now, since I was on Prosware, when I right-clicked, that's what this report page has been filtered down to. So now that you've seen how these drill-through pages are meant to be used, I'm going to show you how to actually create one. So the important piece to a drill-through page to designate a given page as a drill-through page is this new bucket we have called drill-through filters. They'll be right in between page level and report level filters. And this is where you're going to put the category that you want to be able to filter on for your drill-through page. So for example, I created this nice page around all kinds of information about a given manufacturer that I want a person to be able to know. And let's just reset this real quick. So I have this page. This is how it would look without it being a drill through page. It has a bunch of data around all of my manufacturers right now, and I want to be able to always filter onto specifically just one based off a drill through. So I'm going to take that category, manufacturer, and I'm going to drag it into my drill through filters bucket. And when I drop that filter in, two things happen. First is I got this nice little back button that I showed you how to use earlier. And second is there is a single select filter card now in my filters pane. You can see I can only ever select just one at this point. And this filter is what now is going to be used anytime that a person drills through. So now that I have this filter in the filter card, I can, as I said, right click and drill through. And since I have a manufacturer there, that's the column that's going to get passed through. And you can see that it's updating the filter card in the page. Going back to talk about this back button a little bit, this feature is all around just making it easier to navigate. Of course, you don't need it, so we add one back button per page, drill through page automatically, but if you don't want it, you can just delete it, and the users can use the page tabs at the bottom to navigate. Or you can keep it and format it. We have all the different shape formatting options that we have for all of our typical shapes like arrows, squares, things like that. Or you could delete it and add your own shape or image as your back button instead. So you can create your own custom back button, and using this new card we have in the formatting pane, you're able to turn any image or shape into a back button. So I had, of course, the one we automatically added, but I could also insert let's just go with the triangle shape real quick. And you can see I have this back button option for this default shape as well. And so any shape or image I want to turn into a back button, all I need to do is switch this toggle, and now a user could just click to be able to move back to the previous page they were on before this one. One last thing I would like to mention about this back button is I keep saying click to navigate. That will be true for all of your consumers of your reports, anyone looking in reading mode. But while you're in editing mode, since we use click as a selecting the object action, whenever you want to use the back button while you're in editing mode, so editing mode in the service anytime you're in the desktop, instead you're going to control click to be able to go back. This is fairly consistent for, say, like hyperlinks in Outlook or PowerPoint. If you're in reading mode, in those kind of applications, you just click, and if you're in editing mode, you control click. So hopefully, by watching this section of the video, you can kind of get some ideas of how you can integrate this feature into your own reports, and you can see the power of it, the ability to be able to start creating really interactive reports that allow users to drill into additional levels of detail if they want. And of course, this is just the start of this area. If you have any feedback on other additional features you want to see and drill through, like being able to pass more filter context through, more controls over where it goes, like for example right now it's limited to a single report which you can drill within. So if you have any feedback on what else you would like to see added, make sure to leave that in both the comments and also on our user voice site. The second feature on my list is something we haven't had for a little while now, a new chart type. This month we're adding a chart called the ribbon chart. And this chart is all geared towards being able to find and easily visualize the rank change for categories over some access value such as date. And so you'll see in a minute, it's kind of visually like a column chart, but where each individual stack is sorted based off of the size of the categories within that stack. And then we have something that looks like a ribbon connecting them. So this new chart you'll be able to find right after the combo chart options. It's the icon looks something like this. You'll see it says in the tooltip ribbon chart. And whenever you add that to your report, you'll see similar options to what you would see in a column chart. You have whatever you want the x-axis to be, what goes into the legend, and the value that you want to be able to measure. So for example, in mine, I'm going to do sales amount, and I want to see that over order date. Go down a level, and then I want to be able to look across all of the different categories that my products are in. And so, as I mentioned, this chart is all around rate change. So you can see, for example, since it's on top, computers was, for a long time, my top selling category. And then between Q1 2014 and Q2, it actually dropped down to my second category as home appliances took the lead. And it continue to maintain that for the rest of my sales. And I can also see a similar switch happen between cameras and camcorders and my TV and video categories as well. And hopefully you can see just by looking at it the similarities it has to a stacked column chart, but with the added benefit of all of the different categories being sorted by their value. We also have some new formatting capabilities related to the ribbons that are connecting the different columns together. And you can see in general the formatting pane again looks very similar to the stacked column charts, but we have this new card called ribbon that goes along with the new ribbon chart. And in here you have a couple of different options. The first is spacing, and so what this controls is the gap between the different categories within a given column. So as I increase this, there is spacing being added between each of them. So sometimes depending on the look, this may help you get a look you're going for, or it could also sometimes make it a little bit more readable if the values are smaller and really close together. Another control you have is called the match series control. And so you can see right now by default the ribbons are matching the color of the series. But I can go and turn that off and they switch to this gray color. Again, this is all around readability. Sometimes this gray makes it easier to read, sometimes it doesn't depending on the layout. We also have two other features. One is the transparency of the ribbons, so you can make them almost fade away to nothing, all the way to nothing, or you can make them really solid and really dark and obvious. And we also have a border as well, to if you need, especially that looks really nice whenever you're trying to match the series. The border adds just a little bit something to help define them. So play around with these different formatting features. You can get some interesting looks. Like for example, when you turn on borders, you could go to where 100% transparency, and all you have connecting the ribbons is the border, and that's all you can see. You could also make, if you didn't want the columns to show through, you could hit transparency to 0, and you really just have these solid flows happening over time. So make sure to try out this new new chart type and let us know what you think, and if you think there should be any other formatting capabilities available for it as well. The next feature on the list is another one that we presented at the Data Insight Summit, which is integrating our Quick Insights feature that we already have in the service. Either if you've played with the feature in the service, this is the one that if you're looking at a tile and in focus mode, you can get insights on that tile's data to kind of learn more about the different fields that you have in that chart. So we kind of took that base and we found a way to integrate that into the desktop to be in your reporting functionality in the web as well, to kind of find a way to help you answer questions you may have about your chart. Specifically in this case, helping explain the increase or decrease that you may see for a given measure in a chart. So let me show you an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a column chart, and in this column chart I'm going to take my order date and my sales amount. And I'm just going to drill down to the next level. And I'm going to right click on this quarter 1 bar, which seems to have gone down from quarter 4 2013. And when I right click, I see that I have this new option called Analyze. And in there in this flyout, I see the question, explain the decrease. And what this is doing is it's realizing that this data point is less than the one that appeared before in the list. And it's guessing that I probably want to know why this bar decreased. That's why I'm right clicking on it. And whenever I select this, we will run all of our machine learning algorithms to kind of find insights into why this data point may have decreased from the quarter before. And once it's done, all the insights will pop up in this flyout for me to start exploring. And now this part might look very similar if you have used that quick insights feature in the service. This part probably looks pretty similar. I have each of these boxes is one insight, and it has a title, a description kind of explaining the insight to me, and then the chart itself. So what I can do is I can just start scrolling through here and seeing if any of these insights is sticking out to me as a possible answer to my question of why did my sales go down in quarter 1 of 2014. And if any of the insights look interesting, like say this first one, I have a couple of things I can do with it. First, I can actually change the view that I'm looking at, which chart type I'm using. By default, we use the waterfall chart using that breakdown feature we previously released to look at which different categories are influencing that decrease the most. But I can also look at, say, scatter chart using those ratio and shading features that we added for the scatter chart recently. I could also, of course, switch over to just a standard stacked 100% column chart, or I could also view it as a ribbon chart as well. So that new chart I just showed you is also integrated into here as well. So once I find a version of the chart that I like that answers my questions, I can do a couple of things. One, I can, of course, rate that each of these different views. So I can say like, oh, this is a really good insight and give us that feedback. Or if you didn't like the insight for whatever reason, you can hit the thumbs down and tell us why that insight wasn't useful. By doing this, you're helping us learn, and we can continue to improve this feature and improve our algorithms to give you more better insights into your data. And once I've rated it, I can choose to, using this little plus icon here, add it to my report. So once I hit this plus, that insight now is added as a new chart on my page. And at this point, this chart is just a normal chart. I can format it, I can change up what the filters are, what all the different fields in it are. I can drag it around, resize it, integrate it completely into my report. What's nice about this is that this feature is both an authoring and an exploration feature. So if I'm a report author, when I'm building out my report, I can use this feature as a trigger for finding new charts to add to my report to expand what I'm showing my user. Or if, say, I don't have edit permissions to report, I'm just consuming it, and I actually do have this question and the author hasn't answered it for me, what I can do is I can use this purely as an exploration feature, right-click, and find my answer. I won't be able to add it to the report because I don't own it, but I can use it to explore the possibilities for the why a data point increased or decreased, and just use it as a stepping stone to learn even more about the data I'm looking at. Next on our list is something I know a lot of people have been waiting for quite a while, another update to our theming preview. This time we are updating it to allow you to completely control the style of your charts. And so what this means is a lot of people, they tend to have specific defaults they always go to. Data labels on, titles on the axis or titles off, legend, no legend. Depending on the type of reports you build, you probably have a few standard formatting features that right now aren't on by default that you maybe want on. And so that's what this theming update is all about, enabling you to fully customize the default settings for your charts. And so with that in mind, we have extended our JSON format to also include visual styles. So if you look at this extension of the theme that is currently published in our community, Sunflower Twilight, it still has the standard what we had before of data colors, background, foreground, and table accent. But there's this new section called Visual Styles. And now I'm going to break this down into a couple of different pieces. And I'm going to start that with just looking at this one small section. This is a very good example of just like the basics of this new section of the theme. So if I wanted to say turn the filled points on for my scatter chart by default, I could add this visual style section in, type the name of the chart, scatter chart, and then the next layer down is always going to be this star symbol, the asterisk. This will become something in a next or two updates of the theme. This will start to let you be able to create a couple of different types of styles, like the matrix styles and table styles we have now. But for now, this is always just going to be a star, so just put a star there. And then the next level is going to be the card title. So in this case, the card in the desktop for a scatter chart. Let me just create one real quick to show you. Next satisfaction. Purchase again. And product ID. In here, the card is called Filled Point, and I want to turn this on by default. So I put the card's name here, and I say that I want the show flag of it to be set to true. And so that's kind of the basic layout of this. You say what chart type you want to format, you put this little star as the next level, and then in the innermost piece of it, you put all the different cards that you want to format and what properties you want to set within those cards. So for example, for my donut and pie charts, for both of those, I wanted to turn the legend on. So I showed the legend card and I said show as true. And I wanted for the labels, instead of it being the category, which it is by default, I switched that over to % of total. So I set in the labels card, the label style option, I've wanted to set that to the % of total value in that drop down. So you can continue to, for each of these different chart types, set all the different properties you want to control. Say font size, labels on and off, legend on and off, legend position, things like that. Or if there's something that you want to set completely default for your entire report, so all of your chart types, not just one specific one, we also have a way to do that. So to show you that, I'm going to go back up to the top section of my visual styles part of my JSON, and that's where this star comes into play a little bit more. So in my earlier example, I said for specifically scatter chart, I wanted fill points on. But if I wanted to say, for example, turn that responsive visuals feature that we have for all of the Cartesian charts just on in default for all chart types, I can use the star here. That's kind of the any of them signifier. So for any chart type, I'm going to want to set all of these settings. And then within this level, I can either be very specific, like if a given chart, any of our given charts, has a category axis, I want the axis title to be shown. Or if I want it to be even more general, I can put a star for the name of the card as well. So for all chart types, for any card in the formatting pane, if it has font size, I want that font size to be 11. So just by putting all these stars and then font size 11 throughout my entire report, anywhere there's a font size, I can set that to be 11 point font. So this feature is very powerful. It lets you take almost anything you can see in the formatting pane, anything that's not data bound, you can be able to format that in your theme and just import that theme into any of your reports, and automatically these are the new defaults for your charts. It's really powerful and can be a really big time saver, especially considering our formatting pane is quite large and has tons of options that it can take a while to set. And so you'll be able to take, if there's a little bit of a learning curve for this feature, not gonna lie, just because there are so many chart types, so many card names, it's gonna take a little bit to be able to remember what everything is called. We'll have some documentation on this to help. And you can also take advantage of the sample that I left in the blog, and I've also updated a few of the themes in the community as well, our themes gallery there. So you're able to take these as starting points and you can start playing with it and figuring out how to use it. And before I wrap this section up, just to prove that this JSON does work, I'm going to go into my report and I'm going to switch my theme to that theme. So I'm going to go import theme, and this is still under preview, so you do need to turn on the preview switch to see this option. And then I'm going to go, and that was my palette 10. So I'm going to import that, and you can see it turned on data labels. It filled my scatter by default. All of my colors updated, of course, because it still has all the properties that our last theme had. All of my data labels are on. And I don't think I have a pie chart in here, so I'm just going to create a new one just to show that when I create a pie chart, let's just say class and sales amount, you can see also here the legend was on by default and the labels are the percent of total. And so this is just a huge time saver. It might take a little bit to write up the theme file the first time, but after that, huge time saver. So make sure to try out this new addition to our themes preview, and also let us know what you'd like to see added to the themes preview next. Next up is some more accessibility improvements. So for the last few months, we've been trying to add more accessibility features, whether that being easier navigation with your keyboard or being able to use a screen reader, or more authoring features around formatting your charts that makes your charts more accessible. And this month is no exception. We are adding even more improvements to accessibility in the Power BI desktop. And so this month there are two specific features. One is an accessible see data view. Now this is really powerful because it lets people who cannot actually see the chart, either because they have no or low vision, being able to just using the keyboard and your screen reader, be able to get at the exact data points of the chart. So they're not relying just on the title of the chart and just on the description the author set. They're also being able to navigate individual data points. And because we've now added a bunch of keyboard shortcuts to the Power BI desktop to help with accessibility, we've added a little helper dialog to help you know what keyboard shortcuts do what, especially considering there's quite a few of them now and you may forget. So that's the second accessibility feature. I'm going to show you the helper dialog first. So I'm on a report right now, and if I wanted to be able to a reminder of what keyboard shortcut options I have, all I have to do is hit the question mark key. So for example, on the US keyboard, that's Shift/. And once I do that, the dialog will pop up and it will show me all the different keyboard shortcuts. It will remind me that, for example, Control+6 is what's going to move my focus between sections, so an individual chart on the report page and the page switcher at the bottom of the report. And it also reminds me of, say, the new keyboard shortcut that we have for that accessible see data view I mentioned, Alt-Shift-F11. So if I'm on, say, this column chart and I hit Alt-Shift-F11, I'm now in a version of see data that is much more accessible than the default one that you can access through the mouse. This has a HTML table with your focus on the table, and at this point, if you are a screen reader keyboard user, you can use your keyboard to navigate through each of the different cells in this table and hear the screen reader read off the individual values. So this is a much more powerful feature than we've previously had for accessible charts in Power BI. The next bullet point on the list is a high density version of our scatter chart sampling. So if you remember, a couple of months back, we released an update to our line chart sampling with a high density version of it that made sure that you maintained the shape of your data and your outliers while still remaining performant. We've taken that idea and applied it to scatter charts now as well. So the algorithm works slightly different because the chart types are different, but the heart of it's the same. We want to make sure that your charts, when you're showing a very highly dense chart, so tons of data points over our data point limit, we want to make sure that you can see the shape of your data, see where all the points are lying within the plane of your chart, while also being able to spot your outliers. And we want to be able to continue to let you do that in a performant way. So how we're doing that with this new algorithm is we're being smart about what points we drop. So on every sample, of course, that means you do drop some data points, but we're choosing to drop first the ones that weren't going to be visible anyway. So scatter charts, especially dense ones, you tend to have a lot of layering of data points, points being completely obscured by other data points. So those are the ones we're choosing to drop, the ones that you wouldn't have seen anyways. And so what this means is if you have an outlier, those are not going to be dropped because the outliers and scatters aren't covered by anything. And so those will always be maintained. And if you have a very densely packed area, that's mostly where the points are going to be dropped, but you wouldn't have noticed them anyways because they are hidden by the other data points. So let me just show you the difference that this new algorithm can make. So I'm going to take this scatter chart here, and I'm just going to turn off the data labels because I'm going to make this into a highly dense view. And now I'm going to add country to it just to get over that 3,500 data point limit. And now that I've added country, you can see we had a little warning here saying that we are sampling, so you know you're not seeing every single data point. And the view you get by default, because we do feel like this algorithm is so much better, especially for very dense line area scatter charts, we wanted to turn it on by default. So I'm going to go into the general card and turn it off just to show you the comparison. In the general card of the formatting pane, there's this high density sampling option, and when I turn it off, I can see what the old algorithm would have been showing. And so this is just pure sampling right now, not taking in consideration what points are visible or not. So in this very densely packed area, there are tons of data points which I can't even visually see because they're being overlapped. And when I turn it back on, I can see tons of more data points. I can see all of my different outliers and get a better feel for how all of my data is being distributed across this chart. The next feature on the list is gridline style control. So this is just another formatting feature that we wanted to provide you. It lets you have even more control of how your chart looks. And especially if you are using like a gray or a really dark themed report, our default grid lines may have not been the best view for you. So being able to now control how the grid lines are styled, if they're on or off, what color are they, and how thick are the grid lines on your charts, and if they are dashed, dotted, or solid, you now have complete control over that so that you can truly format your charts the way you want them to look. So just going back to, say, this column chart, I can go in the formatting pane, and since my grid lines are only for, of course, numerical values, and I can open up my y-axis card where I have my numerical values, and if I scroll to the bottom, I can see this new grid line section. And of course it's on by default because we have the grid lines on. I could just turn it off and the grid lines will completely disappear. I can turn it back on and I can change the color. I can make it a super bright purple for whatever reason, make it really thick if I wanted to, or leave it thin where it looks a lot better. And I can also style it. And so you can see, already kind of, I bet, see how this can be very useful, especially for dark reports. You can make them show up a whole lot better. Or if you are more of a minimalist when it comes to your chart types, you really subscribe to that, I don't want any kind of chart junk, everything goes away, you can just turn everything off and have a very simplistic chart as well. And so anywhere that you have grid lines, so on scatter, both the X and the Y, whichever numeric axis you have on your lines and column charts, you'll be able to control the grid lines there. The last thing I'm going to talk about within the reporting section is the newest community visuals. If you've been looking at the last couple of releases, you know that this is a new section I'm adding to all my blogs. I'm going to be talking about some of the newest custom visuals that are coming into our store so that you can stay aware and figure out which ones you want to be able to integrate into your reports. So the first one on my list is Calendars by Talon. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And this is all around wanting to be able to monitor some kind of measure over time. So for example, in this report, they are looking at order revenue by the date. So I can see for lighter shading squares, there is less product being ordered, whereas for the darker colored squares, the revenue is a whole lot higher. And so it's a very simple chart. You only have the date field and the values. There are some formatting properties like the cell color that you can pick between. And of course the standard borders, titles, things like that. And by default, it lands you in this year view of your calendar, but you can click on any of the calendar names. So say like March looks like it's a pretty active month for this company. So I'll click on March. And what that does is it drills down into that specific month. You saw my charts updated to show that. And I can see a much more deeper view of that month's data. And then I can just use the arrow to go back up and then drill into another different month if I want. So if you are looking to show information that goes over time, sales by day, amount of units sold by day, things like that, this is another calendar option you have in the community visuals in our Office Custom Visuals store to be able to take advantage of and show this information. The next visual, the Enlightened Aquarium, is one that I am personally very excited about. This was one of our really early custom visuals back in our custom visual store that we were hosting ourselves, and it's finally made its way to the Office Store custom visual section. So I am super excited about this. It may not be the best visual for some professional reports that you're showing to your CEO or something, but if you have a report that you are displaying on a monitor in a hallway, this might be a good way to get people to stop on by. And what the visual is basically kind of like a scatter chart, sort of, but with fish. So let me show you that. So it's a very simplistic visual. You can see here you have a bunch of different fish, and the way this is what data is being represented here is each individual fish is a country in my data set. So some category field that you want to use. And then the size of the fish is based off of a measure. So the smaller the fish, the less unit sales that I have, and the bigger the fish, the more unit sales I have. And they just continue to float on by. You can see them floating. You have a couple of different options in your formatting pane. But really, it's just meant to be a fun, very simplistic chart just to catch your eye if you have, say, you're passing a a dashboard in the hallway. And like I said, and even cross highlights. I am personally very excited about this visual. It's very cute. Maybe not the best visual for certain business cases, but definitely something worth giving it a try. It's fun, and I bet someone on your team is going to like seeing this chart in one of their Power BI reports. The next visual on this list is one that I know a lot of people are going to think is really cool, which is a preview of our Visio visual. So the Visio team created a custom visual integration for Power BI, and what it does is that you're able to create a layout, a flow diagram, or a layout of your factory, or potentially like a sale room floor view, and you're able to bind that Visio visual that you have with the data in your Power BI report. So for example, in this page, we are looking at facility monitoring, and I'm able to see all the rooms on the floor of this facilities and what people are in each of those rooms. And I created this view in Visio, and using this visual, connected it to Power BI and connected it to the data I have in my model. And now it's just like a normal visual. I can cross-highlight and I can interact with it. So for example, I click on this bar, and the chart zoomed in, and I can see specifically that person's room in my Visio diagram. I can click on a different bar, and it would shift down to the next person in the list. So I'm able to, just through Power BI and Visio, create these highly interactive views of really complex flow charts and floor layouts that can be highly interactive and really fun for people to be able to play with and make certain concepts really, really clear. If you want to learn more about this specific visual, we have a whole blog post devoted just to this visual because we think it's that awesome. So make sure to check out that blog post and try out this sample to really get an idea of the power of this visual, because it is extremely powerful. The last visual I'm going to talk about today is the impact bubble chart. So this visual is, if I was to talk about it very simply, is a souped up version of a bubble chart. So you got the standard bubble chart with a bunch of different new formatting features and new ways to visualize data. And their sample is really good about showing you all of the different features available at once. So you can see, like I said, it is kind of like our default bubble chart. You have an x-axis and a y-axis, and you can add a play to that as well. And of course, the size is based off of a measure that you are wanting to visualize. But you also have things like these little bars on the side, so the left bar and the right bar. And each of those can be another measure you want to visualize. So in this case, it's the company 1 and company 2 data. I can add those to each of the bars, and so I can see like maybe these two bubbles are very similar, but for company 1 location, that bar is larger than the one for Florida. And so I'm able to add even more measures to this chart and get even a more deeper view of my data. And of course, we have this little tail thing as well. And so this is a nice little feature for being able to see how data points move over time. So this is kind of similar to the path that we have in our scatter chart, but a different kind of visual view of it. And like I said, this one has a play chart, so you can actually watch the bubbles move over time. And you can actually see the path I was talking about with this tail even better while it's playing. So this chart is both pretty and pretty darn powerful. It does have just a couple of basic formatting options. That's probably not a strong suit. Its strong suit's really the number of fields that you can include and the number of measures you can visualize. I definitely recommend checking it out, especially if you really like our bubble chart, but you're running into limitations in the amount of data that you want to display, like types and measures. This is definitely a visual to check out. Moving on to our data connectivity section, the first feature is a new connector type, the Azure Consumption Insights connector. So you'll be able to find this new connector under the Get Data option, under Online Services. It is called Microsoft Azure Consumption Insights Beta. This new connector lets you build custom reports off of this data source, just like all of our other connectors. And if you do have data here, I definitely recommend trying out the connector and giving us feedback on it. And the second bullet point here is improvements to our Dynamics 365 for Financials connector. You'll also find this connector under Online Services in the Get Data dialog, Dynamics 365 for Financials beta. The two improvements we made both are around usability. So the first is that we've enabled Azure Active Directory sign-on instead of just the basic. So you'll be able to authenticate through that option as well. And then we also can now auto-detect your endpoint for Dynamics 365 for Financials whenever you sign in with your credentials. So this just makes it a whole lot easier to use. So if you have been holding off on using this connector, or you have some reports that connect to it already, make sure to give these improvements a try and let us know what you think. So that's it for this month's release. Make sure to try out all these great features and give us comments on what you'd like to see added next.